Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. As you all know, this is a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease. I see a lot of new names here, so welcome. And also I see a number of returning people as well, too. The way that these webinars work, you create them with your questions, and every week is a little bit different. So I'm interested, as usual, to see what you all have in store for me tonight. For those of you that, well, actually for everyone, the way you participate, there's two ways to participate. Number one, you can see what questions others have and the responses I give to those. Or you can actually go ahead and write your own question. And the way you can write your question, there's a chat box on your screen, and you write your question to me through there. Realize I will not be able to get through all the questions tonight. So if I don't get to you, it doesn't mean I purposely avoided you or anything like that. It just means I didn't get to the question, okay? But we get through a lot of questions each week, so I'm interested to see how far we get into them tonight as well, too. If you are participating in the live version of the webinar, you will actually get to see those questions posted on your screen. If you are participating in the recorded version, you'll have to see how I read those questions and see if they make sense to you, okay? Because of this format, I tend not to like to take really long questions. So if the question starts getting me too involved, I may just tell you in the middle of reading I'm not going to answer it because this format works better for shorter questions. Okay. All right. So as usual, I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar, and tomorrow, somewhere around around 9 to 9:30 Central Standard Time in the morning, I will get an email out to you that says the recording is ready to be watched. And it'll include a synopsis of what we talked about as well, too. And in that recording, you'll be able to sign up for our next series of webinars. So we will be off next week. I'm not going to be having a webinar next week. That would, if I did next week, that would be the 5th in the month. And I usually only do 3 in a row. So we've done 4 in a row now. So I'm going to take a week off next week. And so I'll be back with you in 2 Thursdays, okay? So just keep that in mind too, all right? And then tomorrow when you get that email, I appreciate if you share what we're doing here, if you send information to other people that might get benefit as well too, all right? All right, so one thing, I know what I did. I forgot to do one thing here. Bear with me, everyone. I got to get part of my computer set up a little different. Let's see. All right, I think I'm all set here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a first question here. All right, first question is from Molly. Hi, Molly. Hi, Dr. Ross. My 18-year-old niece was diagnosed a few months ago with POTS. She has been taking atenolol and Florinef, but they haven't really helped. I remember a few weeks ago you talked about POTS on your webinar. What are some of the possible causes you had mentioned? I am wondering if they can figure out the cause that would be helpful for treatment. Do you know of any treatments that would be helpful or tests to take that they can let their doctor know about? All right. So POTS, if POTS does have an underlying cause, it is usually part of chronic infections. All right. So for instance, we see POTS as part of people with long COVID. It's common in there. We see POTS occur in people with tick-borne illnesses like Lyme, which is Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella. And sometimes we even see POTS occur in people that have toxicity issues as well, too. Okay. The more recent data that we have seen from long COVID is suggesting that a possible cause, at least in long COVID, and maybe this falls over into other infection situations as well too, is that in long COVID, due to disturbances in the gut microbiome, there is, and I don't have the mechanism down entirely, but there's disturbances that happen in the gut microbiome, imbalance that happens from having had COVID, and there winds up being a shortage of serotonin production in the body, and that serotonin decreased serotonin production makes it so that the vagal nerve, which controls your blood pressure, whether your heart is racing or not racing, it makes it so the vagal nerve does not work correctly. All right. So one solution that can be done for people in infectious situations is to try to increase your serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter in the brain, neurotransmitter that affects how the vagal nerve works. And one way to raise serotonin is to increase tryptophan as a supplement. And the way I like to do that usually is to have people take something called 5-hydroxytryptophan. Comes as a 50 milligram pill. It's also called 5-HTP. All right. And so you have people do 50 to 100 milligrams 3 times a day. And sometimes that makes it so that you can then pull back on your Florinef and pull back on your atenolol as well too. All right. All right. So in terms of looking at causes, these are things your cardiologist is not looking for. Just so you know, they're not looking for, but they should. Or your neurologist, if they're managing it, they should. But it can often be infection or mold toxicity related. Okay. And if your niece has not had decent testing done for tick-borne infections, the lab, the way that I suggest people doing it when they're stepping into doing testing is to look at the lab called IGenex. It's an independent lab. If you try to send your blood to LabCorp or PAC Lab, any of those labs, the test kits that they use are just not that good at picking these infections up. Versus the IGenex and a specific method they use there called an immunoblot is pretty sensitive, good at finding these infections. If your body they measure the immune reaction, looking to see if you make antibodies that attach to these germs. And their method of doing that check will find these infections about 95% of the time if they're there. Okay. And the big 3 infections I always suggest looking at for in POTS would be Borrelia, Bartonella, and Babesia. And I would suggest getting the immunoblots, which are called an IgG and an IgM immunoblot for those. All right. So you could find that on the IGenex form. The other thing is if your niece happened to have had COVID, it could be part of long COVID as well too, unfortunately. Okay. All right. I hope that gives you some information to work with there, Molly. Good luck. Good luck to your niece. Hello, James. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for these great webinars. You're welcome. Quite a while ago, when I was treated aggressively for yeast, I noticed a strange die-off symptom. My urine would swirl in the toilet bowl. I'd never seen that before. I'm wondering if you had ever heard of this before. Fast forward to today, on fairly rare occasion, I will see urine swirling in the bowl. I wonder if that suggests the yeast is overgrowing in my system and my immune system is finding it necessary to kill it. If so, the swirling urine would be a helpful sign to let me know it's time to consider taking some yeast busters. Any thoughts on this? You know, I haven't seen that, James. I haven't seen that as a sign or a symptom of having intestinal yeast overgrowth. So I don't know. Maybe you're right, but it isn't something I've seen described in any of the literature, and it isn't something I saw with my patients as well too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Valerie. Let's see. What do you know about high voltage EMF magnetism from power lines impacts traumatic or tick-borne infections, mold, yeast, and recovery? A Lyme literate doctor has treated my adult son for 6 years. 2 years ago, he moved into a mold-free home that is underneath big power lines. The house has 6 Goth, healthy is 0.3. His fatigue, brain fog, neuropathy has become so bad that he's no longer able to take care of himself. He left 6 weeks ago, but hasn't recovered. So I'm not the strongest expert when it comes to problems with electromagnetic fields. What I will tell you, though, is not everyone is sensitive to high EMF, but some people are. And especially with some chronic illness, I don't... at a minimum, I suggest that they're not living under power lines, to be quite honest with you, okay? There are some people, though, that even in their home environments have to go further and turn off their Wi-Fi devices. They have to get electromagnetic field blocking devices. they have to go further than that, okay? But I never advocate anyone with tick-borne illnesses that already has. The problem with the tick-borne infections is it increases your sensitivity to everything, whether it's environmental toxins, environmental mold, chemicals, and even electromagnetic frequencies. And so it is something I just don't think is good, especially with what you described there. But beyond that, I can't tell you what's a safe level, and I'm not the greatest expert on how to deal with the problem. Okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Valor. Hello, Ayla. Hi, Dr. Ross. I visited Germany in 2018 and returned from the trip with a whole load of symptoms that caused me a lot of pain and strife in my day-to-day life. My primary symptoms were suddenly loss of vision and then occipital pain, floaters, light sensitivity, and low neutrophil counts. I was undiagnosed for 5 years, but just last year I finally got my diagnosis. I'm weak, borderline positive for Lyme and Babesia, and I have strong Bartonella anaplasma Ehrlichia chlamydia infection, at least according to Armin Labs. My doctor trialed me on doxycycline for 3 weeks and then gave me a combination of cefuroxime and azithromycin for about 4 months. I made some progress and my symptoms eased, but the antibiotics were causing me a lot of trouble, so I switched to Japanese knotweed, cryptolepis, and black walnut. Although I made decent progress, I felt as though my Bartonella needed to be treated a bit more aggressively and started using your Bartonella protocol. So hold on, let me see if I can find the rest of your question here. Oh, there we go. So one of my biggest complaints throughout the entire process is that although treatment has helped with nerve pain, both my visual issues and my neutrophil count refuse to improve. Because I lost vision suddenly right at the beginning, I fear that I have suffered from neuroretinitis, but opticians and even visits to eye clinics never suggest anything is wrong with my eyes. Could you please explain how visual issues associated with tick-borne diseases usually progress, resolve in your experience? It's been frustrating visiting optometrists and getting completely different results every time my tick-borne diseases act up. Also, if you have any general advice as to how to deal with the visual issues, that would be really appreciated. Since this happened, I've struggled to use my computer at normal brightness. Okay, so bear with me a minute. I'm just going back to look at your first question here. So through Armin, you were borderline positive for Lyme and Babesia, but strong for Bartonella. Okay, all right, so just quick comment. So the doxycycline that you took, I believe, for 3 weeks here should have been sufficient to have cleared the anaplasma and Ehrlichia, okay? Now keep in mind, we don't have tests that prove that the treatment for those two infections is done, but usually 2 to 4 weeks of doxycycline is going to get rid of them. And in addition, anaplasma Ehrlichia are not infections that I think of as causing problems, neurologic, ophthalmologic problems like you're having, okay? All right. The azithromycin probably does not do anything for the anaplasma Ehrlichia, but doxy and then azithromycin probably, if chlamydia was active, would have taken care of it, okay? Now, I just have to say something about chlamydia. So chlamydia is a common infection in healthy people. And even though Armin measured it there, that does not mean that your immune system had lost the battle and that the chlamydia that might have been living in you for a long time, not causing any problem, has become active. Armin's way of looking at this does not prove the chlamydia has gotten active. It just says it's there, okay? And generally, I'm one of those people that doesn't strongly believe in chlamydia as a problem. All right, I just want to be clear about that, okay? But even if I'm wrong, the things that you're using to treat Bartonella, like the doxy, and like the azithromycin, will definitely help chlamydia. And then the Japanese knotweed and the, the knotweed, I think will go after chlamydia. I'm not clear about the walnut and the cryptolepis, but they may very well. Okay, knowing how they work, they may very well. Okay, all right. So you have some really severe neurologic problems, right? So you've got visual loss, you've got occipital pain, you have light sensitivity. Those are things that suggest a lot of neurologic involvement. And when we see more severe situations like that, we tend to think Bartonella is involved, and there may be a role for Lyme in here too, but probably the greater possibility of what's bothering you would be Bartonella. In my experience in managing people with floaters, visual snow, eyes that don't track correctly, and even loss of vision, that these problems can all resolve in a lot of people, not everyone, but in a lot of people, as if you treat long enough and you stay at killing the germs, basically. Okay. So in terms of, all right, so then some things to think about with your treatment that I just want to raise with you here. So the Cryptolepis, black walnut, and knotweed are good because they're all going to take care of Borrelia if it's there, and also Bartonella. And in addition, they are going to treat both growing and hibernating or persister forms of the germs. It looks like a decent protocol to me, okay? We are starting to realize, though, that with Bartonella has an ability to weave itself in and out of a blood clotting protein called fibrin, and it can form these things called fibrin nests that attach to your blood vessel walls along with the Bartonella, and they kind of wall off the Bartonella from being able to be gotten at. All right. So one thing, if you're not doing it already, you might want to take a look at is adding in an enzyme called lumbrokinase. Lumbrokinase is a group of enzymes that come from the skin of earthworms. This crazy illness, we got to use more earthworm skin. But anyhow, and what it does is it breaks down fibrin so that these Bartonella that's hiding wrapped in it is better able to be gotten at by your herbal antibiotics, okay? There's different companies, two major companies that make the lumbrokinase. One is a company called Baluki, and there's another product made by Allergy Research, which is called lumbrokinase. In my opinion, they work equally as well. The Baluki is a 20 milligram pill. The Allergy Research product is a 16 milligram pill. The Allergy Research product is more affordable. All right. So whichever product you're going to use, you want to start out one pill a day, and it probably will lead to some herxing. And then after that quiets down, you want to go up to 2 a day. Keep in mind, because it's an enzyme, you want to take it on an empty stomach. If you were to take it with food at the same time, it will be used to digest the food and won't get absorbed to digest your fibrin that's wrapped around your Bartonella. Okay. All right. So that's one thing you may want to consider adding. All right. There's another idea I have for you that has more of a theoretic issue, but no one has done the science to show that it's going on. But let me talk with you about it. Okay. So Bartonella, the one thing that Bartonella does is it infects the cells that line your blood vessels on the inside. Those cells are called endothelium. Now, over the top of the endothelium, there is a layer of something called the endothelial glycocalyx. And this glycocalyx has a job of filtering things in and out of your blood vessels. And if it's not injured, it doesn't. It causes a healthy functioning blood vessel wall. Okay. If it gets injured, one of the things that happens is you start getting a bunch of microclots that form. And the other thing that happens is the glycocalyx, when blood flows over it, if it's healthy functioning, it causes the glycocalyx to release nitrates that then help dilate up your blood vessels. Okay. All right. So it helps dilate open your blood vessels so that even the small blood vessels further down that feed your nerves work correctly. All right. So one of the things that we know from the world of long COVID is that COVID does damage this glycocalyx, and that leads to a lot of organ injury and even nerve injury. That's what we see in long COVID. In the world of Bartonella, no one has done the research looking at what happens to the glycocalyx. It just doesn't exist, okay? But one has to wonder if we see COVID damaging it, resulting in organ damage and limited blood flow because you don't get the release of the nitrates by the blood vessels. We have to wonder if this happens also in Bartonella as well too. All right. So one of the things you may want to take a look at is a product called Arterosil that is an extract that comes from a type of green seaweed, basically. And it's got some data showing that it can help rebuild that endothelial glycocalyx so that you get less platelet aggregation, blood cell aggregation along that lining, which helps open up the blood vessel, all right? And then you get better production of nitrous production so that you get dilation of your blood vessels, even the ones that are feeding those injured nerves, okay? All right, let me go ahead and show you that product, okay? Now, I want to be clear with you. There is no science that shows this is happening, but you gotta wonder. And especially when we see what happens in the world of long COVID and the benefit people have gotten, some protocols that include using this Arterosil, you have to wonder maybe that process might also be going on in within Bartonella too. Okay, so let me just do a quick screen share here. Oh. Okay. So this is my supplement store. And if I talk about supplements in generic terms and you're wondering what is a good product, right? Because a lot of supplement garbage out there, right? But there are certain brands that have a track record of doing a good job of sourcing their ingredients and actually putting in their product what is supposed to be there. And so I've tried to do a good job of curating herbs and supplements that I have found the companies are really good at the quality side, but also I know from experience in my clinic that they work, okay? And anyone can buy from here. The reasons you may want to consider buying from me is I've curated stuff that works. Number two, I pay for shipping as long as your order is over $50. You don't have to pay any taxes if you buy from me, okay? And then we ship out of Austin, Texas, which is kind of central in the United States, so things get to you pretty quick, all right? So those are some things to think about, all right? This Arterosil that I was telling you about, okay, this is the product, okay? And so anyhow, it's shown again to help with that endothelial glycocalyx, supports normal circulation, healthy artery function, repairs the artery wall, and basically just helps your vascular system work better. And a better functioning vascular system is going to be able to help your nerves repair, your eye nerves repair, okay? So the way that you use this is usually I'm going to have people start the first month at 2 pills 2 times a day. And then after that first month, I would decrease to 1 pill 2 times a day. But you may want to give this a try, okay? All right. And then some other things to think about with your injured vision and your injured, oops, what am I doing here? There we go. With your injured vision, some of that, again, is neurologic injury. So I've talked about trying to repair the endothelial glycocalyx so that you get better blood flow to these injured nerves. The other thing that can sometimes help is to rebuild, take steps to rebuild the covering of the cell membrane itself of the nerves, okay? Because they can get injured as well too. And one of the things that's useful at doing that is a product by Research Nutritionals called ATP360. It's made up of the phospholipid fats that make up your nerve cell membrane. And it's the same phospholipid fats that also make up the energy factories within your injured nerves. And they probably need to be repaired as well too. All right. So that is a product by Research Nutritionals. It's called ATP 360. The way to use that is 3 pills 1 time a day. And I usually like to couple that when I'm doing nerve repair with glutathione, which is a strong antioxidant that can help fix injured nerves from the inside, and also the mitochondria energy factors from the inside too. The product I like for that is a product by Research Nutritionals called Tri-Fortify. All right, and so Tri-Fortify is a liposomal form of glutathione. And the reason you want to use liposomal glutathione is it increases the absorption. Okay, and so if you're going to use that Tri-Fortify product, I usually recommend 1 teaspoon 1 time a day. Okay, all right. And then I just want to clarify something. So I know when I was just talking about the Arterosil, I kept on saying nitrates. It's actually not nitrates, it's nitric oxide. I kept saying it, thinking I don't have that quite right. It's nitric oxide, that an injured endothelial glycocalyx does not make enough nitric oxide. A well-functioning endothelial glycocalyx makes nitric oxide, and it's the nitric oxide that leads to the dilation of your blood vessels and better blood flow further downstream. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Maureen. Let's see. I've been taking cinnamon, clove, oregano 2-4 times daily. Methylene blue, cryptolepis 2-3 times, and Japanese knotweed 1-3 times for Bartonella. Is there anything else I can add? It recently flared and is so intense, I am bedbound. Thank you so much. So, you are on a really good treatment. So I want to step back for a minute, okay, and have you look into something besides adding to the killing regimen here. So one of the things that I have found in my practice is that when somebody had been doing well for a while or getting better and suddenly everything collapses or gets a lot worse, one of the things I have observed is about 80% of the time, it's due to too many yeast starting to live in the intestines. All right. Now, just bear with me. There's a reason for that. Okay. I know that may sound kind of crazy, but so what happens is, when you have tick-borne infections, the main reason that you have a lot of the symptoms is your immune reaction to those infections. And specifically, your white blood cells make a group of chemicals called cytokines. Those cytokines are both good and bad. Okay. On the good side, the cytokines help recruit cause more white blood cells to be made, draw those white blood cells to where the infection or the toxin is, and they help those white blood cells work better. Okay, so cytokines can be good, all right? But if your immune system is having a hard time dealing with a problem, it's going to try harder and harder, and it's going to start producing more and more cytokines. And when you start getting into excess cytokines, those excess cytokines give you your brain fog, neurologic dysfunction, body pain, fatigue, sleep disturbances, hormonal dysregulation, etc. Okay, so all the majority of symptoms that we call Lyme or tick-borne infection or toxicity, mold toxicity symptoms are actually due to excess cytokines. Now, if you start growing too many yeast in your intestines, the immune system is going to respond by making more cytokines. All right. So it is possible that it is not that your Bartonella has gotten worse or any of your tick-borne infections have gotten worse. It is possible that you've developed too many yeast in your intestines, which are triggering more cytokines to be made and that are releasing neurotoxins as well too. All right. So to help figure out if this could be too many yeast, I'll show you an article you can look at here in a minute, but I'll just walk you through some questions to ask yourself. So first of all, before you started getting worse, were you eating a lot of sugar? So in other words, did you get worse around the holiday time? And that's a very common thing. People have their cakes and their cookies and everything, and then about 2 to 3 weeks later, things start getting worse for them. Okay, all right. The other thing that can indicate too many yeast is if you were to have something that has obvious sugar in it, you feel worse for doing that. All right. Another thing that indicates too many yeast is if you've had increasing amounts of pimples or acne, or if underlying eczema gets worse or psoriasis gets worse. Skin conditions usually will worsen when there is too many yeast in the intestines. And the reason is that your yeast in the intestines release toxins that get absorbed into the bloodstream and then leading to worsening of rashes, but also increased pimples and acne, okay? Another thing that can indicate too many yeast is increased sugar cravings, intestinal gasiness and bloating, and in females, increased vaginal discharge and vaginal itching, okay? So if you have enough, if you answer yes to a number of those things I just said, then what I would suggest doing first is look at going after your intestinal yeast, okay? A simple thing you could do to go after intestinal yeast would be to this existing regimen, you could just go ahead and add some diflucan. And diflucan, also called fluconazole, can also be helpful for Bartonella. It can do a good job of killing both growing and persister Bartonella. And usually I'll have people do about 200 milligrams daily for at least 30 days. I often will combine that with nystatin. However, since you're on the cinnamon, clove, oregano, they're also going after yeast to a degree, okay? Doesn't mean you can't. You can still grow too many yeast even if you've been doing yeast prevention things. It can happen, okay? But I would suspect that combination of cinnamon, clove, oregano along with diflucan would be enough to get yeast back under control, usually in about 3 to 4 weeks, all right? All right, let me show you an article to take a look at here. All right, so this is my Lyme information site. I think most of you are familiar with it. Take a look at my online Lyme guide here and look in the yeast section. And here you're going to find my article about how do you figure out if it's too many yeast, okay? And I walk you through how to do it here. And then the other article that was here is what do you do if you have too many yeast, okay? So I walk through a number of ways that you could go ahead and treat too many yeast here as well too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Maureen. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Could you please advise on how to help heal a gut that is suffering the effects of antibiotics? My mom has had 3 rounds of IV and oral antibiotics, the last of which was unfortunately not eased her Lyme symptoms, but has in the process ravaged her gut and wiped out her microbiome, leaving her susceptible to infections such as C. diff and Campylobacter, which she both had in rapid succession a few weeks ago. On top of her previous sensitivities to gluten, dairy and gluten and dairy and sugar, she now can hardly tolerate any foods without it giving her bloating, pain, urgency, diarrhea. She has lost quite a lot of weight and has now been passing loose stools, mucus on and off for a couple months. Neither is she able to tolerate herbs, and so her mostly neurologic Lyme symptoms are getting worse as they are no longer being treated. What would be the best way to heal her gut, as well as get decent nutrition, regain strength, so that she can return? So Kelly, so first of all, one thing, so yes, the antibiotics have set her up to have an overgrowth of an infection called Clostridium difficile. Okay, so C. difficile is a bacteria that lives in our intestines. And when we're on antibiotics, it can cause it to grow too much. And when it grows too much, it releases a group of toxins that give you diarrhea, gassiness, and bloating. Okay, all right. So one step that needs to be done is she needs to get that C. diff cleared. Now, I know I'm saying something that you're like, duh, of course. I know that, okay? But I can't tell from what you've just said here what you're doing to treat that C. diff, because that is the important thing. And C. diff, unfortunately, sometimes is hard to treat. All right. So the first step would be get rid of that C. diff. Usually people are going to use something called vancomycin is a possibility. There's a number of other antibiotics that would treat it, but that is something you need to use antibiotics for. The Campylobacter If it is in excess, I think that's azithromycin that works on that. But anyhow, she's going to need to do something to kill those those germs. All right. Now, the C. diff, if she's treated it and is still having a lot of mucus and water, she needs to be retested again to see, did they really get rid of it? Because sometimes C. diff is very difficult to treat. If she is getting into a situation where standard antibiotics we use to get rid of C. diff are not working, then she would qualify to do something that would actually rebuild her gut. And that is to do a fecal transplant, okay? So in a fecal transplant, you basically are taking stool, and you can either do it as freeze-dried capsules, or it can be done through an enema, but stool, a sterilized stool or stool from donors that, not sterilized, but stool from donors is given to a person, and that actually repopulates the intestines with healthy bacteria and gets the intestines working well, okay? And but the only condition that qualifies for doing fecal transplants is chronic C. difficile infection that's not responding to antibiotics. But if you could do that as a segue to get a fecal transplant, often that can reset the gut and get the gut working well again. Okay. Something else in terms of that can be helpful for C. diff is to use a probiotic made up of something called Saccharomyces boulardii, or it's called Sacro B for short. Thorne makes the product. Sacro B actually can fight C. diff. It's not going to get rid of it on its own, but it can help. And so usually I will have people also, while they're treating for the C. diff, and then afterwards, even when they go back on herbal or prescription antibiotics, I will have them continue the Sacro B at least 2 pills 1 time a day, okay? Other things, once she gets clear of the C. diff and the Campylobacter, she's going to need, if she is not fortunate enough to get the fecal transplant, she's going to need to do some aggressive support of healthy bacteria in her gut. One way to do that is to have a heavy plant-based diet. All right, so the plants that we have with beans, legumes, and grains, and fruits and vegetables, all those provide fiber that are healthy sources of food for healthy bacteria that live in the intestines. All right, so it's kind of a natural way of giving prebiotics, basically. All right. Second thing, she would need to be on a spore-forming probiotic. And so something like a core biotic from Research Nutritionals, a couple pills once or twice a day to help promote healthy bacteria growth within her intestines would be something to look at as well too. Okay. All right. Without knowing more about her, I can't say more than that, but it kind of just gives you some framework. Okay. Now, if you have gotten rid of the C. diff and the Campylobacter and she's still gassy and bloated, then it's time to start wondering about too many yeast in the intestines, okay? And I talked earlier about what to do about that. So I'm really sorry to hear this is happening. It's very complicated, but you can't really do anything until you get that C. diff out, unfortunately. All right? All right. Good luck to you, Kelly. Actually, let me do a quick screen share here for you. All right, so take a look. I do have a whole article on how to approach C. difficile, where I talk about the different antibiotics and the probiotics that I was mentioning. The antibiotics you can use are vancomycin, fidaxomicin, and metronidazole. Most people aren't using metronidazole anymore, though, okay? And then I talk about a fecal microbiota transplant that could be done. And then for people that are really having a hard time, they're even doing immunologic regulations with a drug called bislattoxumab. I always love these new drugs. Anyhow, it's something like that, okay? But that's another option for you as well, too. All right. And then let me see here. I'm gonna do. While we're here, let me look at one other thing. Yeah. Okay, so this is a product called Thena, and Thena is basically is stool that is been sterilized from multiple donors. And so it doesn't have any living germs in it anymore, but it's got a lot of good signals and chemicals that are found in the stool that actually support healthy intestinal function. And so it's an alternative to doing fecal transplant because it doesn't have any germs in it, but you get a lot of benefit from all the things that healthy stool have in them that help support healthy intestinal function. Okay. The thing about this product, though, is although it's sold as a supplement, it has to be prescribed by somebody that works with it, that sees you in the office at least one time. So you may want to just read through this site and read about this Athena probiotic. But this may be, especially in people that have really messed up intestines as a result of treating Lyme, once you get the C. diff out, this may be something you consider adding in, but you'd have to find a practitioner that works with it and would evaluate her for that. Okay. All right. All right. Good luck. Hello, Francis. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Marty, for all you do for us. You're welcome. I've been curious for a while about this and wonder what your thoughts are on the following. I've been battling Bartonella and secondary Lyme a while, and recently I had RSV. Weirdly enough, my BART symptoms, including anxiety, headaches, insomnia, etc., went down greatly. Now that I'm well from RSV, the BART symptoms have come roaring back. I've noted this happens before when I'm cycling through a virus. Have you seen this in your patients, and can you comment on it? And is this from what is called quorum sensing, the idea that bacteria viruses somehow communicate with each other? Thank you. You know, I don't know. I haven't seen something like this occur in my practice before, so I haven't actually looked into the science behind it either. So I can't tell you off the top of my head. That's very interesting because typically when you get viral infections, they're going to trigger more cytokines, so your underlying tick-borne symptoms get worse because they're all cytokines related, right? So, but you're having the opposite effect there. So I don't know. I'll have to look into that a little bit, but thank you for bringing that up. Good luck to you. Let's see. I'm not sure if I'm going to say your name correctly, but Mirjana, I think. Maybe that's how it's said. Hello, Dr. Ross. Thank you very much for helping us. You're welcome. I wanted to ask a question. I had marginally positive Western blot test on Borrelia burgdorferi. It was on 3 checkings, marginally positive for a year and a half. And I was on antibiotics during that time, 3 cycles. After Longasef IV, there was no antibiotics, not IgM, not IgG, not ELISA, or no antibodies, not on Western blot or ELISA. IGenex Immunoblot is not available for me now. I was wondering, should I take antibiotics for 4 weeks to prepare myself for Elispot testing in Armin, since my results was marginally positive, or is that preparation to see easier Borrelia just for IGenex Immunoblot testing? Thank you. So my big question is, are you having any symptoms? So if you are having symptoms, it is possible you may still have infection there. Okay. The only advantage to an Elispot is measuring whether your T white blood cells are active against an infection. Okay. And the only way that those T white blood cells are active against that infection is if they've seen that infection sometime in the last 2 months. So that means if an Elispot does come back positive, it means you got the germs living in you for sure. Okay. The trouble is with using it to find out if you still have infection in you is if it comes back negative, It doesn't prove the infection is gone. It just may mean it missed seeing it, because sometimes the germs will hide away, or those germs become so strong that they suppress the immune system and you can't get a reaction on the Elispot, okay? The other thing that makes an Elispot less useful at seeing if you have had infections in you is it doesn't look for enough strains, all right? So on Borrelia, the Armin test looks to see if you have strains against 3 germs, so Borrelia burgdorferi, Afzelii, and Guerinii, all right? But we recognize there may be 8 different strains that the Immunoblot through IGenex picks up, okay? For Bartonella, the Armin test only looks to see if you have antibodies against Bartonella henselae, but we know that there are 15 strains of Bartonella that can infect you. So the Armin test would not pick those other strains up. And for Babesia, Armin only looks, I believe, to if you have antibodies against Babesia microti, but we recognize there may be 15 to 20 strains of Babesia too, versus the IGenex Immunoblot will pick up those 15 to 20 strains, all right? So there's some limitations in using Armin, but if it comes back positive, it definitely means you've got infection that your body has seen in the last 2 months, okay? So then you're raising another question, and that is to increase your chances that your immune system will see those germs, does it make sense to use antibiotics for a while to kill those germs, to turn the immune system more on, okay? Now, that idea is a good idea when you're trying to provoke an antibody reaction. And so your Immunoblot, your Western blots, your ELISAs, they measure antibodies, okay? So it does make sense to do that in those situations. It may also give you some benefit on doing an Elispot because it may provoke, if the germ has been hiding in the body and your T cells haven't seen it, and now you go ahead and start killing the germs, often the tissues are going to release these dead germ parts, and maybe that would provoke more of a T cell reaction. Okay, all right. Anyhow, there's a lot of things to think about. But if you have no symptoms, I wouldn't even advocate testing at all, to be honest with you. All right, all right. Good luck to you. Hello, Sandra. Hi, Dr. Marty. Thank you for all you do. I have Lyme, Bartonella Babesia for about 8 years, on and off Amox and Doxy. I have had a hard time on antibiotics. Recently restarting amoxicillin at 250 milligrams and slowly increasing. I have a lot of burning myalgia when taking this. I'm assuming it's herxing. Which herb do you think is best to take with it for Lyme, Bart, and Babesia? I cannot take 2 antibiotics at once. Also, are you familiar with alicinin, and does it help with these infections? Thank you. So alicinin is a component of garlic, okay, all right? And garlic can potentially treat Borrelia and Bartonella. I haven't seen any information that says it's useful against Babesia, though. Okay, so I just want you to know about that. The amoxicillin that you're taking is only going to be useful against spirochete Lyme, but doesn't do anything for the other Lyme forms or the Lyme growth state. So let me try to clarify my terms here, okay? So the appearance, what Borrelia Lyme can look like is it can exist as a corkscrew. We call that a spirochete. It can have these microscopic cyst forms, and it can also have a form that lives inside of cells. It actually loses its covering and moves inside. We call that the L form. Okay, so those are the 3 appearances, all right? Now, these germs, these spirochetes, cysts, and probably the intracellular forms can either be growing or they can be hibernating. And if they're hibernating, we call those persisters. Small percentage of the germs can become persisters, okay? And so our current thinking these days is that we need to treat something. When we treat for Borrelia, we need to treat for all 3 forms of the growing at the same time. And we also need to have you on something that goes after the persisters, the persister growth state of all these too, all right? So amoxicillin is only good at treating growing spirochete. That's it. All right. So with the amoxicillin, you're not doing anything that is for the Lyme side that's going after intracellular Lyme or cyst Lyme, and you're not doing anything that's dealing with persisters. All right. Okay. Amoxicillin doesn't do anything for Bartonella or Babesia. All right. Now, if you were to want to add one herb into this mix that may give you some benefit, you might want to look at Cryptolepis. So Cryptolepis is an herb that we've been using now maybe about 5 to 10 years to treat Babesia. And how we got the idea to use it is it was being used in Ghana, Africa, to treat malaria. And we've tended to use antimalarials to treat Babesia. Now, more recently, there's data that came out showing that Cryptolepis, maybe about a year and a half ago now, Cryptolepis is good for treating growing and persister Lyme in all three forms, okay? And it's useful at treating growing and persister Bartonella, all right? So if you're wanting to add just one herb, I would probably not do Alicinin, because I don't think it's going to do anything for Babesia. I might look at adding Cryptolepis, all right? Now, Cryptolepis, I like using herbal tinctures for that. I like using a Buhner recommended mixture of 1 part plant to 5 parts alcohol when they do the extraction. The company I like using for that product is a company called Montana Pharmacy. That's what we carry at my store. And when I use that product, what I like doing for my Borrelia and Bartonella treatments using it is I like to dose at a ½ teaspoon 3 times a day. But when I'm using it to treat Babesia, I want to go stronger. I want to go to a teaspoonful 3 times a day. Okay, so for crypto in this situation, because you're wanting to cover Babesia too, I would try to work up to a full teaspoonful 3 times a day. And when you're trying to figure out how many bottles to buy of this stuff, basically a teaspoon is 5 milliliters. Okay, all right. All right, I hope that gives you some useful information. Good luck to you. Hello, Crystal. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you so much for these amazing webinars. You're welcome. I have questions pertaining to diet. I bought anti-inflammatory diet books. Recently, you posted the Mito diet plan. I noticed that it recommends diets for Lyme that are gluten-free. How does gluten negatively interact with Lyme? I also was told I can't have dairy. Is that just me or also for many others with Lyme, with or without co-infections? All right. So the reason that many of us suggest not using gluten is that gluten here in the States, not European gluten, but here in the States, our gluten tends to be inflammatory. Our gluten tends to have your immune system make antibodies called IgG antibodies. So it's a little bit different than having gluten allergy. Like a gluten allergy would produce your immune system would make a type of antibody called IgE antibodies. But there's a lot of people that eat gluten in the States that produce IgG antibodies, which means it's a chronic stimulant to the inflammatory part of your immune system, right? And because there's so many people that are infected by that with the type of gluten we have in the States, most of us that are treating people with tick-borne illnesses where we're trying to have people go on anti-inflammatory diets are going to also avoid gluten as part of that, all right? Now, dairy, I generally don't exclude have people exclude unless they've noticed that they actually do get more inflamed when they have dairy, but the majority of people can tolerate dairy. So I'm not sure why your practitioner suggested not doing dairy. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Crystal. So for everyone that's wondering, so in terms of, let's do a screen share here. So the food plan that Crystal was suggesting here, I'll show you, get my computer to work right. So I have a section here called nutrition, and the plant forward paleo type diet that I recommend is this one here called the best brain inflammation, pain, energy, and detox diet ever. Okay. All right. So that's that's a good source. The reason I tend to like doing paleo here when you're going to do anti-inflammatory is paleo type diets also are heavy in protein and also will support mitochondria function. All right. Now, I will tell you another good general diet to do would be a Mediterranean diet, which I don't have here, but you can Google Mediterranean diets, and those can be quite healthy in terms of anti-inflammatory, and they're full of good nutrients to support your microbiome too. All right. So the two general diets I would recommend these days are either this paleo type diet here or a Mediterranean style diet. All right. Now, there are people that when they first come to see me, I may put on something called an elimination diet. And this is a diet that we give a person. It's supposed to be just for a limited period of time where we're trying to put you on a really restricted diet so that we can learn what are the foods that actually do inflame you or that you do have reactions to, okay? So sometimes at the beginning of treatment, I may put people on this elimination diet for have them eliminate all kinds of stuff for 3 weeks and slowly start adding back in so we can find out what are they really reacting to. And the things that they react to as they add back in will be the things I have them stay off permanently. Okay? All right. All right. Thanks for the question, Crystal. Hello, Jack. Let's see. Could you touch on Th2 dominance and its role in chronic illness? What are things that lead to Th2 dominance in your mind? Okay, so to answer that, let me just kind of do a brief description here. Okay, so there are a group of cells that are grouped under what are called Th1 cells. All right, and these are cells that are primarily your white blood cells that attack germs. All right. So your T cells, some of your natural killer cells will be there, but they're the ones that actually attack and kill a germ. All right. All right. Then there's another group that we call Th2, and Th2 is made up of your mast cells, which are your allergy cells. It's made up of your B cells, the cells that actually make antibodies, and there's some autoimmune cells that are there as well too. All right. Now, there is a theory that in some people with immune dysfunction that you can get either too much Th2 or too much Th1. And what happens in theory when there's too much Th1, it releases cytokines that can suppress Th2 and vice versa. When you get too much Th2, the cytokines that get released here will then result in low Th1 or your ability to fight infections, okay? So Th2 predominance tends to be people that have a lot of allergy problems, your people with mast cell activation problems, and your people that tend to have a lot of autoimmune components. Those would be things that tend to be more Th2, okay? Now, there's ways that you can get these back in balance. And the cell that actually regulates Th1 and Th2 is something called a T regulatory cell. It's kind of like the parent in the room, okay? Tregs try to get Th1 and Th2 to balance, all right? So there are two general things you can do to get more Tregs so that to help bring a balance between Th1 and Th2, or Th2 and Th1, either way, all right? So one way to get more Tregs is to take low-dose naltrexone. So many of you may know that many of you may know about low-dose naltrexone. I'll say more about that in a minute, but you can use low-dose naltrexone, okay? The other thing that can actually create more Tregs to get levels of Th1 and Th2 is to use a peptide product that mimics something called a thymosin alpha 1, all right? And so there is... So integrated peptides makes a product called thymogen alpha 1 that is made up of a couple peptide bioregulators that help lead and can mimic what giving thymosin alpha 1 would do. Okay, so again, the integrated peptides product is called thymogen alpha 1, but the end goal is to mimic what the peptide thymosin alpha 1 would do. Thymosin alpha 1 has been no longer available. The FDA stepped in and said we can't use it anymore because many doctors were making claims that could cure COVID. And basically the FDA cracked down and said, nope, you're not going to do that. We're going to take it away from all of you. Okay, so that's what happened with it. So you could either do a thymogen alpha-1 that would act like thymosin and then therefore lead to increased Tregs, or you could get a prescription for low-dose naltrexone. And naltrexone, well, that's interesting. I don't know why my camera just did that. Anyhow, so low-dose naltrexone, let's talk about that real quick. And then I'll show you a little bit more information about this thymogen alpha-1 too. So naltrexone is a narcotic blocker, and it's used to help people with alcoholism and drug addiction. But if we use it at very, very low doses, it actually has an effect of regulating the immune system, all right? And one of the things that it can do is to increase the production of these T regulatory cells, okay? The other thing it's useful for is it binds to mast cells and actually can stabilize those. So it's useful in people that have more of a Th2 predominance directly by limiting how reactive the mast cells are as well too. Okay, all right. So let me do a screen share here. Okay, so if you're interested in low-dose naltrexone, take a look in my immune system chapter. And here is my article on low-dose naltrexone. Okay, all right. I think I talk about I'm not sure if I actually mentioned in here that it adjusts Tregs, but ultimately that is one of the mechanisms. Okay, all right. And then in terms of this product called thymogen alpha-1. So it is, so many of you know, I carry peptides by Integrated Peptides. And one of their peptide products is this product called thymogen alpha-1, which again is meant to mimic the effects of thymosin alpha-1 that is no longer allowed by the Food and Drug Administration. Okay. And so you can read about it here. And then in terms of how I would wind up using it, basically take a capsule twice a day. Okay. All right. All right. So Jack, I hope that gives you some useful information there. Huh. I don't understand what's happening here. Wow, my self-regulating camera is not regulating correctly. I don't know why that is. Let's see here. No, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it. Very interesting. I don't understand what's happening. All right. Anyhow, something weird is going on with my camera that's supposed to autofocus. It's just taken on a life of its own here, it looks like. All right. Good luck to you, Jack. Hello, C. Hi, Dr. Ross. My LMD ordered cholestyramine for me, but my insurance doesn't cover it, or Welchol either. The formula covers cholesterol. In your opinion, is that as effective as CSM or Welchol as a binder? I know cholestyramine can be ordered from a compounding pharmacy without fillers additives. Is Welchol also available from a compounding pharmacy? Is there a price difference? What compounding pharmacy do you recommend? All right. So I don't know about price differences as to whether your compounding pharmacy can do a Welchol or not. You would just literally need to talk to them. You can talk to a compounding pharmacy and just say, I want to know the differences, okay? In terms of the cholesterol, I haven't used it before, so I'm not familiar if it is as effective or not. I don't know, okay? Sorry about that. Hello. Well, no, let's see. Last spring, I was in lots of pain. The pain is sharp and lasts 15 to 20 minutes. Doctor did tests for inflammation on Lyme. He said I don't have inflammation, but markers for Lyme are high. In July, I took 15 hours of oxygen chambers and special light therapy and was pain-free, but for only 3 months. Does Lyme respond to oxygen therapy? Should I continue with the chamber? All right. So, in theory, oxygen should kill Lyme, but it doesn't always work. All right. So a number of years ago, probably about maybe 15 years or so ago, most of us that were treating Lyme disease were trying hyperbaric oxygen chambers regularly for our patients. And in fact, there were a number of people that bought tanks for their offices. And there was even, for instance, down in Chico, California, there was a company set up a hard chamber tank so they could really do high pressure dives. And in the end, most doctors that were doing this in their offices and most of the tanks stopped doing it because it just didn't seem to work that well. And that was my observation. You may feel better for getting the hyperbaric. And the reason you may feel better is hyperbaric oxygen, in addition to potentially killing germs, which I don't think it does that well, but potentially killing germs. The other big thing that it does is it forces oxygen into your cell mitochondria, your energy factories, which causes them to produce more energy for you. And so you're going to feel better. Okay. So that's one of the ways that it works. And that may be why you feel better doing it. But the effects are not lasting because your mitochondria will run better only if the oxygen is being forced into them. Okay. All right. So in my opinion, the only people these days that I usually recommend hyperbaric to. So hyperbaric can help with mitochondrial dysfunction. If everything else you try to get more energy isn't working, sometimes hyperbaric can be helpful in those situations. The other thing that hyperbaric oxygen is useful for is repairing injured nerves in the brain. So the brain is neuroplastic. It means that the nerves can heal, they can regain connections to dysfunctional nerves. The nerves around them can reconnect to them and get that dysfunctional nerve working better. And one of the big things that helps with neuroplasticity, that healing effect of neuroplasticity, is hyperbaric oxygen. So if I've got somebody in my practice that has that we've done a good year, maybe even more of treatment, and they still have strong neurologic difficulty with thinking, or they have other severe neurologic problems stemming from the brain, I might have a person try hyperbaric oxygen at that point. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Let's see. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Dr. R. Coporphyrin 1, 2, and 3 elevated. Is it lead or arsenic? I don't know. I would have to investigate that further. I just don't know off the top of my head. Okay. You guys are stumping me tonight a little bit. Hello, Jessica. Say hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for taking my questions. What are the intracellular antibiotics and why might they be preferred to treat Bartonella and Morgellons? Why do you need 3 simultaneously or 2 plus an antiparasitic? Is methylene blue considered intracellular antibiotic, or what category of medication is it? Is it bad to use hydrocortisone or betamethasone or steroids with Morgellons? Does it make infections worse? Okay, I'm going to just start taking a few of these. I may not get through all of your questions, a lot of questions here. But okay, so your intracellular antibiotics are going to be your tetracyclines like doxycycline, minocycline. They're going to be your macrolides, which would be azithromycin, clarithromycin, rifampin can be, and the rifamycin, so rifampin, rifabutin are intracellular. Bactrim, which is a sulfate antibiotic, is intracellular. And even the azole, so fluconazole, itraconazole, and those are all intracellular. The methylene blue. So anyhow, so treating Bartonella, Bartonella lives inside of cells. So to get at it, we definitely need to use intracellulars. Okay. And although I haven't seen any studies that tell me methylene blue goes intracellular, because people do so well with Bartonella using methylene blue, I assume it is intracellular as well too. Okay. All right. So those would be your intracellulars. And yeah, I usually like to use 2, sometimes even 3 of them at a time. Okay. All right. Is methylene blue considered Yeah, I think I just answered that. So I don't agree that in treating Morgellons, you need an antiparasitic. I don't think Morgellons is a parasite, as I think I discussed last week. So I generally tend to go more with the intracellular antibiotics, and I usually use 2 or 3 with my Morgellons, and I tend to find good results. And keep in mind, as I said last week, Morgellons, I believe, is a manifestation of Lyme and or Bartonella. It is not its own infection, but rather it is a skin manifestation of Bartonella or Borrelia. I know there are some out there that think it is a parasite, but no one has ever identified a parasite as part of this. Okay, so I don't agree with that. Yeah, anyway, this is my opinion on that. Let's see. In terms of, so I generally don't like using steroids of any kind with Morgellons or in Lyme, because you wind up getting immune suppression, which allows the germs to cause more havoc. Okay. Same with Bartonella as well too. So no, I don't like using them for the topical skin breakdowns that people get with Morgellons. Let's see. In your previous webinar, you mentioned there is resistance to MEPR on the East Coast. Why is that? No, I don't know. Other than that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that out on the East Coast, the Babesia strains have learned some resistance to MEPR. I'm wondering if I could be resistant, and maybe that is why I'm not benefiting from MEPR that I have been taking for so many months. In a previous webinar, you mentioned that intestinal yeast could lead to yeast in the windpipe and make it feel like food is stuck in your windpipe. I have had this symptom for a long time and had barium swallow test and motility testing, all normal. Wondering if it could be yeast. How would you go about? So in terms of that, whenever I get that sensation, I have a patient with that sensation, I generally just try a course of diflucan and see if, as part of using that, it will clear. The other thing I would point out to you is if you have too many intestinal yeast, and by that I mean food pipe all the way down to your rear end, if you've got too many yeast there, those yeast release toxins, and the toxins get absorbed by your skin and will make any skin condition worse, including Morgellons. So if you have not done anything to treat for the possibility of intestinal yeast overgrowth and food pipe yeast overgrowth, you may want to give a try and see if that does make a difference for the Morgellons type skin condition that you're having as well too. Okay. All right. Good luck, Jessica. Hello, Joyce. Let's see. Thank you for continuing to host these very valuable webinars. You're welcome. I currently take cat's claw, Otoba, Houttenia sitacuta for long-term Lyme and Bartonella. Every few months when I'm feeling normal, I come off these herbs and within 2 weeks I get sick again. I don't do well with pharmaceutical drugs. I do believe, though, not recently tested, I experienced an overproduction of yeast and then followed the yeast protocol until I feel normal again. I feel like I'm stuck in a round robin game and need direction. A while back, you recommended a doctor in California. as I was experienced chest pains, breathing issues, etc. Unfortunately, she did not work out for me, and I ended up figuring out my symptoms were due to some very stressful personal issues in my family. I was able to figure things out on my own, and those chest pains and breathing problems are gone. I am hoping you can give me some direction, as I'm tired of dealing with this for 22 years, the first 15 years dismissed by all doctors. All right. So the one thing the one suggestion I'm going to give you is your treatment right now for your Lyme and your Bartonella is limited because you're not doing anything for persisters or biofilms. All right. So one of my protocol recommendations that I recommend is, in addition to using the cat's claw, the atoba, the hutania, and sitacuta, is that people also take liposomal cinnamon, clove, and oregano. And the reason I recommend, what is my camera doing here? Unbelievable. Anyhow, my there's a gremlin who's taken over my camera here tonight. Anyhow, so the cinnamon, clove, oregano is useful at treating persisters, which only right now, that regimen, cat's claw may go after persister Lyme, but nothing else is going after persisters, okay? And if you don't treat persisters, each time you stop, the germs are going to come out of the hibernating persister form and go back into a growth state again, okay? So that may be one reason, all right? The other thing that the cinnamon, clove, oregano capsule can do is it helps break down biofilm layers that cover the germs that also protect them from getting eradicated, all right? So at a minimum, I would consider adding that in. And in terms of whether you do or do not have yeast, if you find that you're having a lot of sugar cravings, intestinal gasiness or bloating, skin changes that I mentioned earlier, you get worse with sugar, you may want to do something specifically treating yeast at the same time. Now, your cinnamon, clove, oregano will help with yeast to a degree, but in addition, you may want to add in an herbal product that targets yeast specifically, and that would be something like a Karuna Capri Plus. That's CAPRI, capital PLUS, all as one word. That has in it caprylic acid, garlic, and some oregano, which would complement even the liposomal cinnamon, clove, oregano capsules you'd be doing too. Okay, so those are my thoughts. The Karuna you would do as a couple pills twice a day, the Karuna Capri Plus, that is, and then the cinnamon, clove, oregano you would add in as one pill twice a day. All right, so consider that one. Just briefly from what you've written here, that's what I see missing right now. Okay, all right, good luck to you. Hello, Crystal. Can people make their own version of liposomal cinnamon, clove, oregano by putting essential oils mixed with a carrion, a veggie capsule? Could this be equally effective as the Dr. formulations you recommend or inferior? Yeah, I mean, in theory, it could be. The thing is, you'd have to look at the different milligrams of essential oils that are in the capsule by Dr. Inspired Formulations. I like that ratios they have there. And if you can create something similar to that, in theory, it should work. I don't know why not. Okay. All right. Good luck. Let's see. Hi, Mary. Let's see. Can ATP 360 be taken one capsule 3 times per day instead of 3 capsules? Yeah, it can. So ATP 360, everyone, is something you use to repair your mitochondria, which are your cell energy factories, and also can repair damaged cell and nerve cell membranes. And yeah, you can take it as 3 pills 1 time a day, or you could take it as 1 pill 3 times a day. There's no problem doing it that way. It'd still have the same effectiveness, actually. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Mary. Let's see. Hi, Iwana. Let's see. Do electric Rife machines work online? So I assume you mean Rife, not rifle machine. So Rife machines, everyone, are machines that generate an electromagnetic frequency wave, and you find a frequency that has the prospect of vibrating with the Borrelia infection and bursting it, much like you could take a opera singer and have them stand in front of a glass of water and they can sing in a way that glass vibrates and breaks. the same idea as what a Rife machine can do for various infections. And each infection is supposed to have its own frequency that it's going to be susceptible to. All right. I have a whole article on rifing if you want to take a look at that. But basically, when we look at how effective it is, it may help about 40% of people. All right. I've never seen anyone get a cure from a Rife machine. I have seen some people get help from it. My experience says about 40%. Myelime Data, which is a group out of California that's been collecting information from people with Lyme and asking them various questions. A number of years ago, they asked them, what alternative medicine treatments have you tried, and did you have side effects, and did it work, right? And what their data suggested is that of people that tried Rife machines to treat their infections, that around 40%, 35 to 40% of people had benefit, all right? So it's not a panacea, but some people do get some benefit from doing it, okay? So I'll just do a quick screen share so you can read a little bit more about rifing in my article. All right, so there's my article. All right, so I think in here I gave you some resources to, let's see here. So in terms of a good book about how to rife, I actually reference in here, Brian Rosner has a book called When Antibiotics Fail, Lyme Disease and Rife Machines, okay? His book is a good how-to book on how to rife. In terms of picking the various frequencies, there is a book by Nina Silver, which is called Rife, the Handbook of Rife Frequency Healing, Holistic Technology for Cancer and Other Diseases. That gives a it's a good reference list of various frequencies that you could try as well too, okay? All right, let's see here. Hello, Lou. Let's see. Diagnosed with myositis. Have you seen this in conjunction with tick-borne diseases before? Yeah, I have seen it. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but I have seen it occur in both Borrelia and in Bartonella. And in both situations, as we got those infections under control, the myositis got improved and went away. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Lou. Hello, Dinah. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I'm taking tinctures that are made with alcohol and then alcohol is removed and replaced with glycerin. I'm sensitive to alcohol. Do you think these tinctures are okay? So it depends. So what I do with people that have alcohol sensitivities is basically I'll have them take the number of drops they're going to use from their alcohol-based tincture and put it in water that has just been boiled. All right. And the idea is that putting your drops in 1 ounce or 2 ounces of boiled water, the heat will steam off most of that alcohol. And then what is left in the water has all the active ingredients. Okay. All right. So you don't necessarily need to then put them back in glycerin. I would just prepare it at the time that you're going to use it, steam off the alcohol, and then go ahead and drink that water once it has cooled down and you've got all the active ingredients. Now, to be clear, it doesn't 100% remove the alcohol though, okay? All right. But it gets rid of a lot of it. All right. Good luck to you. All right, everyone. So we're getting a little bit later here, and I'm kind of tiring out, to be honest with you. I want to do one thing here, just a minute. Okay. So I want to just take a moment here and invite each of you again to take a look at my group called Lyme United. This is an online community for people living with Lyme disease that I host. And we currently have somewhere around 70 members now. We're slowly growing. And we have room for more members. And I want to try to grow our community to about 100 to 200 people. We have a group of very active, involved people, very knowledgeable. We're all learning together. I learn from our members, and it's a group that is really working well, okay? In our group, we have a number of forums. And one of those forums, this is, for instance, what the group looks like. If you go, it would look like this image here, all right? But we have different forums. One of our forums is a member-to-member. This is where members can talk with each other, post to each other, support each other, share ideas. I generally will look at that group periodically, especially if somebody names me, I'll come and make a comment, and I will make sure that the ideas being discussed are safe so that if people come up with ideas, I want to make sure that they're not going to hurt themselves, all right? And I will tell you, I rarely have had to tell anyone that I don't think that's a good idea. It's a really good group of people, all right? In my online support group, I have a live webinar once a week called Ask Marty Ross MD Live. And it's different than these webinars. What makes it different is I host them in a Zoom room where I can actually talk and ask questions from the people. And each week we spend an hour and a half together on Tuesdays. And I will wind up taking two people and really break down their case. I'll ask them questions. They ask me, they're trying to get ideas on what to do, and I'll do that. And then I open it up for 30 minutes of open questions, okay? I have a daily space called Office Hours with Marty Ross MD, and this is something that you can write questions to me Monday to Friday, and I take between 12 and 1 each day. I respond with as many responses as I can get, all right? There's a forum where people tell us what's going right called Wins on Wednesdays, so we all learn from each other. And then we even have a space where our members can create their own events, all right? So it's a really good group. I encourage you to take a look at this page and see if it's right for you. If you're getting a lot of benefit from these free webinars, I got to tell you, my Lyme United group is like doing this weekly webinar that I do. It's like doing it on steroids, okay? You're going to get a lot more out of Lyme United. And we have room. We're trying to take on more members. So I encourage you to join us here, all right? All right. You know what? I think I forgot to do my screen share. That's not too good. Let me go back. I got to do one more thing just so you can see what I was talking about. All right. So this is on my Lyme information site. There is a page called Lyme United where I describe this group. So take a look at it. I welcome all of you to join us there. Okay. All right, everyone. That's it for me for tonight. I've got to go ahead and take care of myself and get some Basenjis walked, and those are my dogs, and start relaxing for the evening too. I enjoyed being with you here. Please consider joining my group. I would appreciate having more members there. In addition, look at your email tomorrow morning, somewhere between 9 and 9:30 in the morning. I will send out an email which will contain a synopsis of what we talked about today with links as well to the recording. In that email, you'll be able to sign up for the next series of webinars that begin in March. Wow, how did we get to March? But in March, and I encourage you tomorrow, share that email with everyone. Anyone you know that might get benefit, go ahead and share it with them, okay? All right. So I enjoyed being with you here tonight. Good luck, everyone. See you in a couple weeks.